So we got the jobs data and the inflation data. You guys ready to have fun with today's video? Because I know I certainly am, because there are a lot of funny things to talk about today. The first thing we have to discuss, guys, is the jobs report. We will get back to inflation in a minute because, this is the big shocker, okay? The jobs report was such a giant miss that it's not even something that I could have predicted here on the channel. Like, it was so bad and so far below expectations, I think it kind of blew everybody away, and no one was really expecting it was gonna be this bad. The expectation for the September jobs numbers was that it was going to be 125,000 new jobs created in September. Came in at a whopping 12,000, guys. We're talking 10% of what was expected. 10%. That's it. How can it even be this bad? Well, obviously the mainstream media and the government is blaming it on the fact that, well, we had Hurricane Helene, we had Hurricane Milton, we also had the Boeing strike, which was 33,000 people out of work, and because of all of that, well, this is the reason why we only had the 12,000 jobs. But that's actually a lie. And the reason why it's a lie is because the expected jobs numbers was already factoring in the hurricanes and the Boeing strikes. It was supposed to be 125,000 despite that stuff. And to make matters even worse than this absolutely horrible jobs report is the fact that the last 2 months were also revised down. We had a big story earlier this year talking about how we lost an additional 818,000 jobs that were revised down for the first half of this year. And we continue to see all of the jobs reports since then revised further down. They don't get revised up, they always get revised down. So all of the numbers that we've been getting have been so wrong and so fake just to make things look good right now. So the September numbers were revised down by 31,000, but the August numbers were even worse, okay? The August numbers were 159,000 initially and revised down 81,000. When you take a look at this graph here, this shows you just how bad this recent jobs report was, okay? The last time we actually had a negative jobs report was at the end of 2020, and what was going on then? We were in the middle of the world's craziest pandemic anyone has ever seen. Okay, and that's when we had an actual negative jobs report. And ever since then, it was actually pretty high for the most part until it started to really die down at the end of 2022, guys. And that's why people like me have been saying that we've been in a recession essentially since the last 2 years. And when you take a look at this chart, this proves that just by looking at how few jobs are created and how it just keeps dwindling and dwindling from there. But as these job numbers have dwindled, we've heard more stories than ever about how strong the economy actually is. And here's what makes things even worse. When you exclude the 40,000 government jobs, the private payroll jobs were actually in negative territory to the tune of about negative 28,000 jobs. I've kind of explained this point before on the channel of how the government has been really goosing the jobs data because a lot of the jobs that have been created have mainly been in government and healthcare and education, which are all different forms of government jobs. Government is directly funded by government, and then a lot of the healthcare is subsidized by government through Medicare and Medicaid programs, as well as federally subsidized insurance programs. And then you also have education, which is also heavily subsidized by government because of all of the grants that the government gives to local school districts and things like that. So what do you think is going to happen next after this horrible jobs report? There is a high probability that the next one for November is going to be even worse. And we're also probably going to see the October numbers revised down in December. So that's all going to happen after the election, of course. So it's funny that all these things are happening right now, kind of just like a couple of days before the election. And things are not any better on the inflation front either, okay? Because core inflation is still at 3.3%, guys, which is actually up from the previous month of 3.2%. So inflation continues to go in the wrong direction as well. When you take a look at this chart here of US core inflation, you can see that we had a big uptick in inflation over the past couple of years, and then it's steadily been coming down up until the last few months when it's been starting to go back up. So how do you think this is going to look for all of the people in charge who are trying to get reelected right now without naming any names? And look, it's not just presidential either, guys. Everybody who's on the ballot this year is responsible for this, right? We just had the Fed cut interest rates a little over a month ago by 50 basis points because they were so certain that inflation was going to be done for. Just going to keep going down. You know, there's nothing else to worry about, nothing else to see here, folks. Let's just cut interest rates, and they're probably going to cut again in November. And here's the problem. The Fed and the government is celebrating right now because the actual CPI data came in at only 2.1%. So they're saying, well, look, we basically got it back down to 2%, but that's a lie. You know why? Number one, because CPI is not very accurate of what the average person faces in terms of cost of living. But besides that, the Fed's preferred measure of inflation is actually the PCE. And when we look at this, we can see that the PCE is still sitting at 2.7%, which is still a lot higher than the 2% goal or the 2.1% CPI reading. Moreover, you can also see that the PCE numbers on inflation haven't moved since July, guys. In June it was 2.6, and in July it went up to 2.7, and it has been holding steady at 2.7%. And this is all during a time when oil prices have been artificially suppressed. You know, the government right now is doing everything they can to keep oil prices artificially low in order to kind of juice the election results, right? They want the current administration to look good. And listen, no matter who is in charge, they would be doing this right now. So it's not like it's just, oh, this one or that one. Everybody would be doing this. But you have to just sit there and laugh on how pathetic this is. So imagine this, if the PCE and also the core inflation numbers continue to stay steady as well as go up, all during a time when fuel prices have been basically suppressed to artificial lows. Imagine what's going to happen to these numbers when fuel prices are allowed to run wild again after this election. Inflation is going to go berserk. Absolutely berserk. It is going to go up probably just as fast as we saw it go up when it was really going up during the pandemic. That's my guess, because even with all of this influence, even with all this extra help, they still can't prevent it from going up. And then with the Fed lowering interest rates and planning their next round of QE, this is going to make things 10 times worse. This is also supposed to be the greatest economy ever, especially when it comes to manufacturing, right? You hear all these stories about, you know, how good manufacturing's doing in the US right now. Also a total lie. We just got the numbers for the Chicago PMI, which is a manufacturing index, okay? And they were looking for a number at 47.3. It's down to 41.6, guys. Take a look at this chart here. You can see this is the lowest reading we've had since May of this year. Really lower than it's been in the past year for the most part, except for March and May of this year. And any number that comes in below 50 is indicating that we are in a recession. Pretty much everything that you've been told about this economy over the past year or two has been a complete lie, just to make things look good, to try to instill confidence into people, try to convince people to continue spending, and that's going to be the right move for you. And clearly, you're about to get robbed blind even further by further government stimulus and further inflation, and this is all proof of it right here. On a quick side note, this video and my next video is probably going to be the last ones you guys will see of me here in the Bay Area, and then I'm headed out of here. But I just wanted to share these views with you guys because I'm certainly going to miss this view and this gorgeous weather here, that's for sure. But also at the same time, I'm looking forward to going back home to Miami and being back in Florida and changing it up again. For anybody who saw my insurance video the other day with Sean, the insurance adjuster, there was a ton of valuable information in there, and if you didn't see it, I highly recommend you go and check it out. But another story that was sent to me about insurance that just proves even further that these insurance companies are just full of scams is this. Okay, State Farm was just accused of funneling excess profits to its parent company as it seeks rate hikes. So basically what they did is they bought hundreds of millions of dollars of excess reinsurance from parent State Farm Mutual Automobile Insurance Company over the past decade while getting little back in return. But here's the scam. This is where it comes in, guys, because they bought a total of $2.2 billion worth of homeowners reinsurance from 2014 to 2023, and it received $400 million back to cover about 20% of what it paid for reinsurance during this time frame. But all this money went to their parent company. So what happened to all of it? Well, obviously it was taken, it was stolen, and people did whatever they did with the money. And at the same time, they can come out and ask, states to increase insurance rates by 30% because otherwise we're going to go out of business, or we're going to pull out of your state and no longer write policies there. Meanwhile, these guys are getting completely rich off of our dime. I've also made several videos about fast food and how much those restaurants are struggling right now. And you basically have this tug of war between all of these fast food restaurants that are trying to race to the bottom and have this value war of who can bring in the most people for the best and cheapest deal. Obviously, food costs have gone up for everybody, but eating out costs have gone up substantially more than eating at home. And it's not really a deal anymore to go out to fast food restaurants for the most part unless they are offering one of these deals. And you got to understand, guys, it's not just about price. Like, say McDonald's had a $5 meal deal before, right? Now it was $7 because of inflation. But what if they threw in a few little extras and they also promised to deliver you the food even faster, and the customer service was better or the taste was better? Then most people probably wouldn't care to pay the extra $2 because the value would be there. But what's happening with these restaurants is the value perception is going down because of things like the speed of service, the consistency of the service from restaurant to restaurant. Those things matter, as well as what people feel like they're getting for the money. And interestingly enough, Chipotle is one of these companies that is still doing better than a lot of the other fast food restaurants because the value is there, at least in the eyes of its customers. Because even though it's more expensive to go to Chipotle than it is to go to Wendy's or Taco Bell or McDonald's, people feel like they get more for their money, like you're getting a heartier meal, it's healthier, there's more food. The value proposition is there. Right? That's the big thing. Companies like Starbucks are losing big time right now because obviously it's a lot cheaper to just brew coffee at home, but also their menu is extremely complicated, and you get upcharged for every little thing. You want to add milk, you want to add cream, you want to add this, you want to add a pump of extra flavor on something. It all costs extra. So it can really bump up the price of a coffee that's already more expensive than if you were to make it at home. And it can just make it so that the value isn't there. McDonald's is hurting big time because people aren't seeing the value anymore. Now they're saying that they have seen somewhat of a recovery in their sales and people coming in due to their new $5 meal deal that was only supposed to be for the month of June and ended up getting extended all the way through the end of the year, because so many franchisees said, yeah, let's continue doing it because this is pretty much the only way we're getting people through the door right now. Shake Shack was a company that was bragging about how well they were doing despite all of this, and now they're starting to see a little bit of a slowdown too, and Shake Shack customers are also starting to complain about the value proposition, guys. Like, I'll tell you one thing for sure that I'm gonna miss about being out here in California is In-N-Out Burger, because In-N-Out Burger is probably the best value you can get in terms of the amount of food, how fast you get the food, and the price. And also the taste is very good. I personally like it better than Shake Shack, but in Miami, close to where I live, all we really have is Shake Shack and BurgerFi, and BurgerFi I really don't care for, so I'm kind of stuck with Shake Shack. And when Lizzie and I go to Shake Shack now, it's probably almost $30 for both of us to get burgers, and if she wants to get a milkshake or something like that, and then also an order of cheese fries, you're looking at $30. We can go to In-N-Out, order the same thing, and be under 20, even here in California. which is kind of crazy. But if all these fast food companies were smart, they would just look at what was their best selling items, over the past 10, 15, 20 years and start offering more of that or even cheaper versions of it to try to bring people back in, guys. Instead of playing, these mind tricks and games with people, oh, we're gonna have a $5 value meal temporarily, make it permanent. The problem is they really can't. These restaurants are kind of losing their entire value proposition, and that's why many times in the past I've talked about this, that this very well could be the beginning of the end for fast food restaurants. Because if people who are going to go out or who can afford to go out to eat are going to decide to go somewhere, they might as well just go somewhere and pay a few extra dollars and have a better experience, eat healthier food, and get more food for the money and get that value. So I'm pretty much of the mindset, guys, that I don't really believe any of the feel-good stories anymore, and I haven't for a long time. But really all of this most recent economic data with the jobs and inflation just actually proves that things are worse than what's being reported. And the problem is people who disagree with this are not actually looking at this data. They just look at the headlines of the feel-good stories saying economy's strong, CPI is at 2.1%, or unemployment is still historically low, sitting at 4.2%, or whatever. People look at that and say, wow, this is still really great, and as bad as things are here, it's actually so much worse in other places around the world. So the US is lucky because we still have the strongest global economy, and that might be true, but if we actually have the strongest economy in the world, then the entire world is in trouble right now because things are not great here. And if this is the best it gets, then it's probably just going to be downhill from here. And I do feel sorry for people who think that after the election is over, that somehow all of these things are going to get magically turned around and it's all just going to be beautiful overnight. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Regardless of who gets elected, that's not going to happen. These are major systemic problems we have going on globally right now and also domestically, and it is going to take years, if not decades, to fix these problems. And even then, the only way any of these problems are going to get fixed is if the government officials start actually taking these problems seriously. Everything they do is inflationary. Everything they do is tomorrow, let's kick the can down the road. Everything they do is, focused on stupid little things like, oh, let's make it easier to cancel your Netflix subscription because that's such a huge problem for people right now, instead of inflation and dealing with the real issues at hand. They focus on all these Mickey Mouse issues that really don't do anything for the average person. And they use all that stupid legislation that they put forth to point to and say, hey, look, we did all of this for you, now vote for us. But why? You're not fixing any of the real problems that anybody faces, so why should we pick you? People have asked me, oh, Michael, since you're so upset about all this and you think you can do better, then you should run for office. But I'm not going to do it, guys. And the number one reason why is two things. One, I can't be a liar for a living, okay? Because that's what all these politicians are. They lie, they cheat, they steal to convince people that things are great, just like we're talking about right now. I won't do that. And also, I like my freedom. I like being an entrepreneur. I like being able to come to California in the summertime and escape the Miami heat and work in a tank top and shorts every day. Like, this is me. This is my outfit. You're not going to see me in a monkey suit sitting inside all day, hobnobbing with all these politicians. It's just not me. Believe me, I've thought about it. Maybe one day when I'm older, if I feel like, that's something I want to pursue, I might do it. But realistically, I don't see myself doing it because it just doesn't feel like the right fit for me, just like being a real estate agent wasn't the right fit for me either. So my advice to anybody watching this video right now is do not believe any of the news headlines you see moving forward. If you don't read deeper into it, if you don't peel back these stories a layer or two deeper, you're never really going to know what's going on. And just by being a headline economist, you're not going to know anything, guys. You're going to be so far behind and so brainwashed with the Kool-Aid they're giving to people right now, then it's going to cause you to make some pretty bad decisions in your life, unfortunately. Some people say, well, what's the big deal if this information is wrong or misleading or whatever? It's not really hurting me. Well, it is hurting you a lot because people make financial decisions based on these things. They make investment decisions based on these things. They buy houses based on all the lies that are being told about the economy and the housing market. So it has a tremendous effect on people's well-being and long-term success in life. So it's very important to get the right info. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.